Hello, my friend. Welcome to tonight's bedtime story. This is Luna. Tonight, I'll be here with you, gently guiding you toward rest. Right now, you don't need to hold anything together anymore. There's nothing left for you to accomplish. Tonight, all you need to do is listen. To be with you during this quiet moment before sleep, to be a gentle voice beside you, is something calm and deeply comforting. Tonight's story is for children, and just as much for the child who still lives within you. This is a story for anyone, no matter how your day has been, whether your mind feels clear or tired, or simply quiet and present. This is a slow-moving world, a place that doesn't rush forward. Here, rest is not laziness, but something completely natural. Before the story truly begins, we'll take just a few gentle moments to let your breathing slow down and allow your body to find a place of safety. So now, if you're ready, let's begin to relax together. Now, let's begin to relax together. I'm going to count down from 10 to 1. As I do, there's no effort required. Simply allow yourself to let go little by little. 10. Feel the support beneath you. Perhaps it's the bed, the sofa, or whatever is holding you tonight. Truly feel that support. Beneath it all is the deeper support of the earth, steady, quiet, and always there. 9. You are safe. Know that tonight. My voice is simply a friend, a gentle companion, guiding you only toward calm and safe places. 8. Now, gently bring awareness to your body. There's nothing to change, just notice. When you're ready, take a slow breath in, and then slowly breathe out. Once more, in and out. 7. With each exhale, allow your body to soften a little more. In your mind, slowly move through your body, noticing anywhere that may still be holding tension or tiredness. 6. Perhaps your feet, your legs, your belly, your chest, your back, or your shoulders. If you'd like, allow them to relax now. 5. The day is done. Whatever has happened today can be set aside for now. There's nothing to revisit, nothing to plan. This moment is only for rest. 4. If thoughts appear, there's no need to resist them. They are simply thoughts. They come and they go. Watch them drift away like leaves on a moonlit river, or clouds moving slowly across the night sky. 3. This is your moment. This is your time. You deserve rest. You deserve peace. 2. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do, no obligations at all. Simply settle here. 1. Allow your imagination to gently open. In your mind, a safe and quiet world begins to appear. a place that is slow and kind. Now, you're ready to drift into tonight's sleep story. Night did not arrive suddenly. It came the way it always did, slowly, quietly, as if it did not wish to interrupt anyone's thoughts. The sky dimmed by degrees, blue fading into deeper shades until color itself seemed to grow tired and rest. The village by the sea was already calm. Windows glowed with soft amber light, and shadows stretched gently across the ground. Somewhere a door closed. Somewhere else a dog shifted in its sleep. Life continued, but in whispers. The sound of the waves moved in and out of the dark, steady and patient, like breathing that had gone on long before anyone learned to listen. The young man stood near the shore, his boat resting behind him, its outline barely visible under the moonlight. It was not a large boat, nor a new one. Its paint had faded, and its wood carried the marks of many seasons. He had known this boat since he was a child. It had always been there, pulled slightly above the water, tied loosely, waiting without expectation. Tonight it felt different. He stood there longer than necessary, hands at his sides, eyes on the water. Not because he expected the sea to change or offer a sign, but because standing still felt easier than moving forward. Behind him, in a small house near the edge of the village, his parents slept. Their breathing had changed in recent months, lighter, sometimes uneven, sometimes pausing just long enough for him to listen more carefully. Illness had arrived quietly, much like the night, and once it came, it did not hurry to leave. There were days when the young man allowed himself to believe things might return to how they were before, days when laughter seemed possible again, when mornings felt less heavy, and then there were nights, like this one, when reality settled in fully and he knew that hope alone was not enough. Money had begun to run out, not all at once, not in a dramatic way. It disappeared slowly, the way sand slips through open fingers, grain by grain, until suddenly there was very little left. Medicine cost more than numbers could explain. Rest was something his parents could no longer afford. Time itself felt expensive. So he chose the sea, not because he was fearless, not because he believed in fortune or miracles hidden beneath the waves. He chose the sea because it was the only place that had ever offered him work without asking who he was or what he carried inside. The sea did not care about stories. It did not ask about past failures or future plans. It did not judge hesitation. It only asked that you showed up. He stepped closer to the boat and placed his hand on its side. The wood felt cool beneath his palm, slightly rough, familiar in a way that tightened his chest before he could stop it. Memories surfaced quietly. He remembered being small, sitting beside his father, learning how to tie simple knots. He remembered hands guiding his own, patient and steady. He remembered laughter, sunlight breaking across the water, and days that seemed endless because they had not yet learned to end. Those memories felt distant now, as if they belonged to someone else, someone lighter, someone who had not yet learned how fragile ordinary days could be. The young man climbed into the boat slowly, careful not to disturb the stillness around him, as though the night itself might be sleeping. The wood creaked softly beneath his weight, then settled. He pushed away from the shore, and the boat accepted the movement without resistance, gliding forward as if it had been waiting for this moment. The village lights remained behind him, soft and steady. They did not disappear right away. Instead, they seemed to fade inward, becoming quieter rather than smaller, until they blended into the darkness and no longer asked for his attention. Soon he could not tell where the land ended and the sky began. The sea was calm, but it was not empty. Each wave carried its own sound, a gentle rise and fall, repeating without effort. It reminded him that time did not pause even when people wished it would, that life moved forward with or without permission. He rode without hurry. There was no need to rush. Fishing at night required patience, and patience was something the sea always demanded in return. As the boat moved farther from shore, the air grew cooler. The scent of salt became sharper, cleaner. Stars appeared one by one, not all at once, as if they too were choosing their places carefully. He looked up at them and felt something loosen inside his chest. Not hope exactly, something quieter, a small opening, a sense of space, as though the weight he carried had shifted just enough to let him breathe again. He thought of his parents, of his mother's hands, once strong and warm, now resting most of the day, of his father's voice, still gentle, still kind, but softer than it used to be. "I'll be back," he had said before leaving, though no one had answered. The words mattered anyway. The boat drifted onward, and the young man allowed himself to simply be there, between the stars above and the dark water below. He cast his nets into the sea slowly, carefully, as if placing them into a dream. The ropes slid through his hands, and the nets disappeared beneath the surface without sound. The water closed smoothly, leaving no trace. That was the way of the sea. It took what was given without ceremony and offered nothing in return, at least not immediately. The boat continued to drift, guided by a current he could not see. He adjusted his position, settling into the quiet rhythm of waiting. The wooden boards beneath him were cool, holding the night's chill. Above, the stars remained still, unchanging, as if they had already seen many nights like this one. He wondered how many others had sat upon the sea like this, not heroes, not adventurers, but ordinary people trying to hold their lives together. generations of quiet figures, each carrying reasons they rarely spoke aloud. The sea had received them all without comment. A small wave brushed against the side of the boat, gentle but insistent, then another. The movement was soothing, almost lulling, and he allowed his body to follow its rhythm. For the first time that night, he noticed how tired he was. Not the sharp exhaustion of a long day, but a deeper kind, the kind that settled into the bones, built slowly from weeks of concern and nights spent listening for sounds that might signal trouble. He rested his hands on his knees and breathed in slowly, then out again. The air tasted clean here, unburdened by walls or worry. Each breath felt like borrowing something he had nearly forgotten he needed. His thoughts drifted. He remembered mornings long ago, his mother waking him gently, his father already dressed for the day, carrying responsibility without complaint. Back then, the world had felt arranged. Problems belonged to adults. Now he understood how fragile that arrangement had always been. The sea rocked the boat again, not as a warning, but as a reminder. He opened his eyes and looked into the darkness. It stretched in every direction, vast and patient, unconcerned with his fear. There was comfort in that. Here he did not need to be special. The sea did not expect success or failure from him, only presence. Time loosened its grip. Minutes softened. The waiting no longer felt heavy. He thought again of why he had come, for medicine, for quieter mornings, for keeping promises that had never been spoken aloud. If the sea offered him fish, he would accept them. If it offered nothing, he would return anyway. The nets tugged faintly beneath the water, not enough to signal success, not enough to cause worry, just enough to remind him they were still there. Above, a thin cloud passed across the moon, softening its light. The water darkened, then brightened again. He followed the cloud with his eyes until it disappeared. Somewhere between one breath and the next, he realized this voyage had already begun to change him, not loudly, not all at once, but quietly, in the spaces between waves, in the pauses between thoughts. He leaned back slightly, letting the boat support him. For now, it was enough to be here, floating between past and morning, between worry and rest. And the sea, silent as ever, received him. Not forward, not backward, but outward, stretching itself gently across the water. The young man remained where he was, floating between motion and stillness. The boat rose and fell in small movements, as if responding to a rhythm older than thought. Above him, the stars had shifted slightly, not enough to notice at first, but enough to remind him that time was passing, whether he marked it or not. He adjusted the rope beside him, testing its weight in his hands. The nets remained quiet beneath the surface, their presence felt more than seen. Waiting deepened. At first, waiting had been something he endured, a necessary pause between effort and outcome. But out here, waiting became the state itself. There was nothing else to do but remain. The sea offered no distractions, no voices, no signs, only the steady language of water, spoken again and again without variation. His thoughts began to move differently. They no longer rushed. They drifted, touching memories lightly before moving on. He thought of the days when his parents' illness had first been named, how the word had sounded small, almost harmless, despite the weight it carried. He remembered the quiet nods, the polite listening, the unspoken understanding that life had changed shape. Out here, those memories softened. They lost their sharp edges. The sea did not erase them, but it held them in a wider space where they could rest without pressing so hard against his chest. A breeze passed over the water, cool but gentle. It brushed against his face and moved on. He welcomed it. The boat responded with a slow turn, shifting its angle without resistance. He did not correct it. There was no need. Control felt unnecessary here. That realization surprised him. On land, control had felt essential. Schedules, money, appointments, careful plans that never quite held. Here, none of those things mattered. The sea did not ask him to manage it. It did not respond to worry or precision. It simply existed. The young man rested his hands on the edge of the boat and allowed his shoulders to loosen. Somewhere deep beneath the surface, the nets brushed against unseen currents. He felt a faint pull, not strong enough to act on, not weak enough to ignore. He waited. Minutes passed, or hours. He no longer knew which. The moon hung lower now, its light stretched thin across the water. The reflection broke and reformed with each movement of the waves, never quite holding its shape. He watched it quietly, finding comfort in its impermanence. Nothing stayed the same for long. Not light, not darkness, not even pain. That thought came to him gently, without promise. His eyelids grew heavy, not with sleep, but with the deep calm that arrives when vigilance finally eases. He had spent so long listening for signs of trouble. A cough in the night, a change in breathing, a sound that might mean everything was about to fall apart. Out here, there was nothing to listen for. The sea would do what it would do. If a storm came, it would arrive honestly. If nothing came, that too would be clear. There was relief in that simplicity. The young man shifted slightly, adjusting his balance. The boat responded immediately, then settled again. He felt held, not protected, not promised safety, but supported in the way water supports whatever rests upon it. His thoughts returned to his parents, but differently now, not with urgency, not with fear. He imagined them sleeping, the room quiet, the night passing slowly. He imagined morning light finding its way through the window, whether he was there or not. He realized then that this voyage was also about learning how to let go, just enough to breathe. A soft sound rose from the water nearby, a fish breaking the surface or something unseen returning to depth. The sound faded quickly, leaving no trace. The young man did not move. Even moments passed here without asking to be kept. The nets tugged again, slightly stronger this time. Not a catch, not yet, just a reminder that effort existed, even in stillness. He wrapped the rope once around his hand, then loosened it again. There was no hurry. The sea seemed to approve. Stars dimmed and brightened as thin clouds passed overhead. The sky breathed in its own slow rhythm. He followed it until his thoughts grew quiet again. Somewhere between wakefulness and rest, the young man felt something shift inside him, a small acceptance, not of outcome, but of process. He did not need to know how this night would end. He did not need to see the shore to trust it still existed. For now, it was enough to remain. The boat drifted onward, the nets waiting below, the sky watching above, and the sea, vast, patient, indifferent, continued to carry him through the long hours beneath the stars. The sea changed before he noticed, not suddenly, not with drama or sound. It softened. The waves grew smaller, their movements less insistent, as if the night itself were beginning to loosen its hold. The young man opened his eyes and realized he had been resting them for longer than he thought. Not asleep, but close enough to have forgotten the shape of time. Hours had passed quietly, leaving no clear trace. The sky had shifted again. Stars faded one by one, not disappearing, but yielding to a gentler shade of dark. The moon sat lower now, its reflection thinner, less certain, as though it too were preparing to let go. Morning was not here yet, but it was no longer far away. He sat up slowly, his body stiff from stillness, his limbs heavy but calm. The boat responded with a soft sway, then settled again. He listened. The sea remained calm, patient, unconcerned with marking endings or beginnings. His hands moved to the rope almost without thought, and in that instant he felt it. The nets were heavier, not by much, not enough to promise abundance, but enough to be real, enough to matter. He paused, not of hesitation, but recognition. This was something he could work with. He began to pull the nets in slowly, letting the motion set its own pace. The rope slid through his hands, rough against his skin, warming as friction built. Each pull required effort, but not strain. Each breath found its place naturally, rising and falling with the sea. The nets emerged from the water inch by inch, dark shapes giving way to movement, to quiet life. Fish appeared, not many, not few, enough. Enough to sell, enough to return with, enough to justify the night. He placed them gently into the boat, one by one, as though care itself might preserve what the sea had allowed him to take. Their scales caught what little light remained, silver and muted. He looked at them for a long moment. There was no surge of pride, no sense of victory, only acknowledgement. This was not triumph, it was continuity. The boat sat lower in the water now, its balance changed, more grounded, more certain. He gathered the remaining rope, neatly, without rush, and allowed himself to sit back once more. For the first time that night, a feeling close to relief settled into his chest. Not joy, not celebration. Relief was quieter than that. It was the easing of a question that had pressed against him for weeks, for months. He closed his eyes again briefly and thought of his parents, of returning home before the morning fully arrived, of the sound of the door opening softly, of his father stirring, half awake, of his father's voice, low and familiar, asking only one thing: how was the sea? He imagined answering simply, it was calm. That would be enough. The sea shifted beneath the boat, turning it gently, as if reminding him which direction he belonged to now. He did not resist. The return felt different from the departure. The darkness no longer felt endless. The waiting no longer felt heavy. The shore reappeared slowly, not as a clear line, but as a sensation. The air changed. The scent of earth mixed with salt. The water grew shallower, its movements smaller. Land announced itself quietly. The village lights returned, few and soft, unchanged. They did not beckon him forward. They simply existed, as they always had. As he rode toward them, the young man felt the night settle into him, not as fatigue, but as understanding. He realized then that the true gift of the sea had not been the fish. It had been the hours of holding uncertainty without being destroyed by it, the practice of waiting without despair, the experience of moving forward without guarantees. The sea had not promised him tomorrow. It had not explained his future. It had not taken away fear. It had simply given him space, long enough for his thoughts to soften, for his breath to deepen, for his heart to steady. The boat touched the shore with a muted sound, wood meeting sand. He stepped out carefully, adjusting to the firmness of land beneath his feet. The night was thinning now. Birds had begun their earliest movements. Somewhere, the day was preparing itself. He lifted the fish, their weight familiar, necessary. But there was something else he carried as well, something lighter, the understanding that not everything needed to be solved at once, that one night, one effort, one return could be enough for now. He paused before reaching the house and turned to look back at the sea. It remained unchanged, wide, indifferent, patient. And yet, he felt different, not stronger, not wiser in any dramatic sense, just steadier. He entered the house quietly. Inside, his parents slept. Their breathing was still uneven, still fragile, but he no longer listened with fear alone. He settled nearby, close enough to hear them, close enough for morning to find him there. Outside, the sea continued its endless motion. Inside, the young man allowed his eyes to close. Whatever tomorrow required, he would meet it one voyage at a time. And for now, for this quiet moment, that was enough. Now the story has gently come to a pause. There's nothing you need to remember and nothing you need to understand. From here, only sound remains. Perhaps it is rain, perhaps distant natural sounds far away. These sounds do not require your attention, and they do not ask you to follow. They will simply exist, just like the night. If you are still awake, you can simply listen. If you are already asleep, that's perfectly fine. Now, let the sounds continue. From Luna, wishing you a peaceful night.